As a responsible person with growing concerns for your privacy and personal liberty, you want to know where we're headed and what you can do about it. We ask the experts what you need to do to take prudent and responsible action to safeguard your family's wealth and well-being, and what basic first steps will help you to be aware and prepared. ReluctantPreppers.com.
Welcome back, Reluctant Preppers. We have a distinguished returning guest today, J. Wayne Fears, one of the most prolific writers in outdoor literature. He has over 6,200 magazine articles published and has written over 32 books on how-to and awarded numerous awards for journalism and conservation, and voted one to the Explorers Club enshrined in the Legends of Outdoors Hall of Fame. He is the author of How to Build Your Dream Cabin in the Woods, as well as all those other books. He was here before with us at Reluctant Preppers to talk about survival in your home, bugging out or outdoors, and finding the perfect location for your survival home. J. Wayne Fears, welcome back to Reluctant Preppers.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, you promised the last time that we were talking with you about the location for your survival home that we could have you back on again here, and you would give us more details on what to either look for or build into a perfect survival home itself. So if we could turn our focus, again, we'll have you let you recap briefly on the setting just to set the context of the ideal location, but we'll spend most of this talk talking about if people are in a situation where they can either locate or do major renovations and remodeling to update their existing home, or one that they're going to buy to be ideal for them for a prepared, self-reliant, resilient home. Or if they have the opportunity to actually to start from scratch and build the home to their design, what they should put into it. So we're just very pleased you're here with us. And if you could let us know first, how did you get into thinking about building a survival home? Why did that even enter your mind as a person who's experienced in outdoor search and rescue, that sort of thing? But why the home itself?
Well, we were at a point where my wife and I wanted to build a home. And so that gave us a lot of options because I work from the home. We could live anywhere we wanted to. So what we decided to do was to build a home that would, A, be a modern, convenient home, very comfortable, but B, we wanted to build into it if we had short-term emergencies such as major storms, severe weather of any kind, be it just where we live, high temperatures in July, August, and early September can be a problem in itself. We're in a tornado-prone area. And also, we're believers that the way this country is going, we're going to see some severe problems of one type or another down the road. So we wanted to build a modern home that would, during the short term at least, we would be very comfortable in, have modern conveniences, and yet if short-term or long-term emergency situations occurred, we could withstand those without having to leave our home. Now, to us, that meant going to a rural area, and we started looking for a rural area that was kind of specific. In fact, it took us 2 or 3 years to find where we built. And we were looking for an area that was far enough away from a major metropolitan area so that it would be pretty difficult for people to at least on foot, or if gasoline was short, be able to try to get to us. Also, I wanted an area that was rural in nature because there were a lot of self-reliant farmers between our property and the city, because these people are pretty good about taking care of who comes across their property or who is coming down their road. So eventually we found an area that was about 20 plus miles away from a major metropolitan area. But the other thing we were looking for in location, we wanted to, I've spent my entire life, and a lot of it alone, in wilderness areas, and I know that being isolated is not the way to go, especially we have long-term problems. We have civil disorder and things like that. You got to have people to help you You can't run a security program and defend your place just one little family by itself. So we started looking for an area that was a community of like-minded people. And we looked for an area that would be near large mountains where there was firewood and things of that type. Yet we wanted to build in an area that was open where wildfires and things like that wouldn't be a threat. So we found a large farmer who had just passed away, and the second generation inherited the farm, didn't want it as a farm, and they subdivided it into large acreage tracts. And we bought the first one in there, and we wanted a piece of property that backed up to a year-round stream. Not only as backup for water, but it's a nice place to hang out during the summer and that sort of thing. Also, it's good for fishing. So because we were the first ones to build in there, other people who were what I would call reluctant preppers saw that we bought in there, and they came and talked to us, and they started buying. And eventually, without a plan, eventually we have neighbors now that are all reluctant preppers, but all prepared in some way. We have 3 retired military colonels with combat experience that live in here. We have a cardiac nurse that lives in here. Everybody here is very familiar with firearms, and everybody here does some gardening, has chickens, knows something about living off the land. And several of us have got quite a bit of experience in trapping and hunting. So this piece of property being at the end of the road, we can isolate it and do whatever we need to do back here, and it's very defensible if it ever came to that. The other thing is all of our neighbors are large farmers, some of them cattle farmers, some of them row crops, and great people for neighbors. First of all, they're a buffer between us than any major roads, and these are people you can barter with if we got into a long-term food situation. So that's a short version of how we found our location to build the modern survival home that we built.
You mentioned that one of the criteria that got you interested in this in the first place was the threat of severe weather, and that's something that occurs all over the country and the world in different forms. I've seen statistics saying that, for example, floods kill more people than all other forms of severe weather combined, and that the leading cause of death due to severe thunderstorms is actually lightning strikes, and the fallout from that. And there's a lot of other statistics that might surprise people, but you mentioned in your neck of the woods there were some specific types of severe weather. I believe tornadoes is one you mentioned. What in the world can people do to, when building or doing major remodeling on a home, to provide themselves safety from severe weather threats, like as you did?
Well, severe weather threats was a major concern as we planned this home. And just to start with, we live in an area where the summers are fairly long, and like right now we're in a period where every day it's 96, 97 degrees and that sort of thing. So the first thing that we wanted was to try to build a home that we could escape the heat, even with the air conditioning and everything. We would like to keep the air conditioning costs down as low as we could. So the first thing we did, and we had a lot of help. I'm not a builder and I'm not an architect, so I had to go to outside sources, and there are tons of people who'd be willing to help you for free. But when we built the house, we put a radiant barrier sheathing in the roof, and that's simply plywooded on the inside. There is a breathable aluminum foil, to put it in simple terms, and all of the sheathing in our house, and our house is a one-level house, and that turns the hot summer sun back out quickly. Our attics are surprisingly cool. So that was the first thing we did. The second thing we wanted to do is we wanted the best insulation that we could get. And in all the exterior walls and in the ceiling is a foam insulation, very thick foam insulation, that during the summer the house stays cool, and during the winter the heat stays in and it stays very warm. In fact, due to these two things, and the third thing being we got the best windows, triple pane windows that we could get with gas in between the panes. With those three things, our utility bill is a third what it used to be in the house we had before this one. So what we were trying to do is to build a home that could withstand these hot summers. And yet, on the other hand, where I live, it can get a few degrees below zero during the winter. And we have ice storms, and we get 3 or 4 snows every winter. So the house was built with all these weather extremes built in so that we could be comfortable regardless, knowing that where we live, whether it be due to tornadoes or whether it be due to ice storms or whatever, we can be isolated for days and weeks at a time. In the great room, number one, we have extremely tall ceilings with fans in them that run off a generator, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But also the fireplace is a very modern, and it's basically a wood furnace, not your typical fireplace. And it has a catalytic converter in it, and we can run year-round. We needed to just burn in wood and keep this house warm. And we had the opportunity right after we built it to test it. Due to a wiring failure, the central heat system went off, and we stayed in here about 4 days with it around zero outside, shut most of the house off so that we were running on the fireplace in the great room, stayed very comfortable. And we can also heat and cook on that fireplace. You can open up the doors to it, and we can do hearth cooking without any problem. Now, the other thing I mentioned is knowing that we're going to have short and somewhat long periods without power here, we had the whole house wired for a generator, and we have a large generator outside that comes on automatically when the power goes out. And it runs on propane, and we have an underground propane tank, 500 gallons, that will just run in full time. If we've got a full tank of propane, we can run this house about a month and a half to 2 months on that. And that runs not only the fans in the rooms of the house, but it runs all of our appliances. We have a propane stove, which we can start without having an electrical starting. We have tankless hot water here. So we can go just on that generator alone. This house will run for about a month and a half, assuming we've got pretty much full tank of propane. So the whole house was designed for bad weather. Now, the last thing, and probably the most important thing, and the thing I hope we never use, is when we were building the house, and you don't have to be building a house, you can add these things, a lot of these things on doing a fixer-upper or doing a modernization of an older home or whatever. We put in a large safe room, and this safe room was designed by a company in Texas, and it's a lot of concrete and steel coming out of the ground, and it's large enough that 5 or 6 adults can spend a long time in there. It doubles as a gun safe in my particular case, since I write a lot about firearms. It has food and water in there for long periods of time. But we also connected it with the phone system, with the TV, with the heat and air system, so that if there's any utilities running while you're waiting out a storm, you can still be comfortable. You can watch on TV and watch the weather radar to see what's coming. The whole storm room is designed to withstand a direct hit from an F5 tornado, so it's a pretty sturdy room. So this entire house is built for short-term and long-term, if it need be, survival, whether it be weather or other situations.
What are the benefits? You mentioned your propane tank in your article around this that you wrote. You mentioned it's stored underground. What are the benefits of underground storage?
Well, you drive through rural areas of America, and you see people, a lot of rural areas, and even a lot of urban areas, their own propane, but the tanks are sitting right there on the ground. And all you got to do is, let's say you've got civil unrest. If somebody comes along, and let's say they have a tracer around, they can put it especially with an armor-piercing tracer around, they put it around through that tank, and they got a bomb, and they just cleared out everything in that area. Well, we wanted ours underground. We didn't want people to know about it, to see it, and if it ever came to an extreme situation, I didn't want anybody thinking if they can get with it close to it, they can take us out just by setting off, 500 gallons of propane.
And in your backup power source, you mentioned that most of your utilities, your appliances run from propane or can, including your instantaneous hot water heater. But you also have backup electric generator. And can you tell people about the sizing considerations that you considered, how you chose that specific generator and what it provides you?
Yeah, and I'll use a company name, which I have no affiliation with whatsoever. We went with Generac. And you can go to a Generac dealer, and they're all over the United States, and tell them the square footage you got, what electrical appliances and lighting and that sort of thing you're going to have. Then they can help you pick which size unit it would take to run your house. Now, a lot of people run just portions of their house so that they don't have to buy such a large generator. And that's a real good idea. In fact, when we designed this house, we designed interior insulation as well as exterior insulation, so we can shut the house off in sales depending on what the needs are, and to not push the generator too hard, for instance, on lighting and things of that nature. And we have two separate heat-air units here, which we can shut one of those completely off just to reduce the size of the space that we're living in. So picking a generator size, most people need to get outside help, but there's a generator that will fit anything from a one-room tiny house to a huge mansion, just depending on what you're willing to spend. And you got to consider how much propane you want to store, what size propane tank you want to bury. And another thing that I should mention also, that all the utilities in this area where we live are underground, so we don't have as big a threat with the ice loads and breaking power lines and phone lines and things like that, or windstorms and the things that normally take out your utilities. Since we're at the end of the line in this county for utilities, we went all with this whole area is underground, and that's an ideal thing too.
On many people's survival home list, one of the first considerations is stored food. What did you do specifically in the area of stored food, and what advice do you have for people in that regards?
Well, one of the very first things we did, that was important to us. We've had some tornado outages in this part of the country where we were out of food for 5 to 10 days because it knocked down long-range transmission lines. And this whole area, about 4 years ago, was down not only in the rural areas but in municipal areas as well. They were down anywhere from 5 to 10 days. And we lived in a subdivision at that time, and we literally, because we believe in food storage and having alternate ways of cooking, we were serving food for people that lived in a very nice subdivision who had no preparation whatsoever. So having a good supply of food on hand is important to us. We designed in this house a large walk-in pantry. This is a very large pantry, and where we've got lots of canned goods, lots of dried foods in there, and we rotate those religiously. Also, we have just off the kitchen a utility room, which we keep at least 6 months of freeze-dried food in there at all times. Now, but due to the nature of my business, I'm in the back country a lot, so I'm rotating a lot of that freeze-dried food as I'm off on trips where I have to take with me freeze-dried food to live anywhere from 2 months to 3 months sometimes. So, but we have lots of food here, and far as just our family is concerned, we can go about a year without having to worry too much about food. So having a place to store food, I think, is extremely important. And the big thing, everybody talks about buying guns and ammunition. I try to encourage people, first of all, get anywhere from 6 months to a year's supply of food that you can store safely and have it on hand, and then start buying your guns and ammunition.
In addition to the stored food, you live in an area where there's wild harvestable or huntable food available, and you mentioned about special facilities, not just this pantry for storage, but where you're going to cook and process that wild harvested food.
Yeah, one of the things we planned not only was our home, but we have what I call a shop. It's a place where I store my ATV, I store my tractor, farm equipment, and that sort of thing. But we also have a complete outdoor kitchen as a part of that shop. And I've written books on Dutch oven cooking and all this wilderness cooking, and we do a lot of the photography here. So we've got a complete setup. I've got a full set of cast iron Dutch ovens, for instance. And in this shop, we have a large insulated room that's set up for reloading ammunition, storage ammunition, and we have a butcher shop in there where, within walking distance of the house, we can kill small game, deer, turkey, things of that type. So we got a complete butcher facility, and we do our own butchering. We don't take our game somewhere else. And also in the backyard, we have raised bed gardens, which this summer we were giving the elderly in this area an awful lot of food that we had a lot more food than we could consume ourselves. So, yeah, we are pretty well set up where I can run a trap line from here. We live adjacent to a large chain of mountains, and I know most of the large landowners there and have permission trap and hunt there. But just on our property, and our property is very small because the creek runs, a year-round creek runs through there, and we have a large wood lot there. We can take 2 to 3 deer and do every year, and 2 or 3 gobblers every spring, and there's plenty of squirrels, rabbits, that sort of thing. But we do our own butchering. We're set up to do it, and we do our own gardening and canning and things of that type.
And even more urgently needed continuously throughout any emergency situation than food is water. There's that old saying that you can go 30 days without food, without perishing, but more like 3 days without water, especially in a high temperature where there's a lot of loss of moisture from the body. So what did you do specifically in designing your survival home to make sure that you had an adequate supply of fresh, drinkable water?
Yeah, I think water is far more critical than a lot of these other issues that people interested in survival want to talk about. The very first thing, and it was a stroke of luck, this county where we live, and in this particular area where we live, they just put in, before we bought out here, and just put in a water treatment plant that has 2 sources of water. A huge mountain stream runs by it. They can extract water from there, and then they put in a huge deep well into an aquifer which hasn't gone down, and there's a really good supply of water there, and they put in a first-class water treatment facility there, and it's very isolated. But we're in the first few miles of getting water from that source, and it's great water. We have great water pressure here, and the neat thing is the water treatment facility there has a huge generator and a huge propane storage facility, so it can run in short-term emergencies. It could run a long time and provide us with water. But I think about long-term, I think about situations where generators were burned out, EMPs or whatever. There's no way of sourcing water from the county any longer than what we have just recently put in the back is a well in the back of our house. And I can run it either off of a generator-run pump, or I have and I'll use another company name, I have no ties with them whatsoever. Bison has a hand pump which will pull water from as deep as 200 feet, and they have a high-capacity pump, so we can pump water there, and we can keep a great water supply. And then a third level of protection is about 300 yards from our back door is this year-round creek which comes out of the mountains, and we have water filtration devices of our own. We can get water there if need be. So we have 3 levels of water, and I think that is extremely important. And another thing that we do here, and I recommend whether people live in the city or wherever, is buy storage facilities. We keep in our shop, we keep about 500 gallons of water stored all the time. So you might say there are 4 levels here, either short-term or long-term, of providing water.
And as long as you're talking about that storage building, that's a multi-purpose storage building. You mentioned in your article that you wrote for us on that other purposes that you can employ that storage building for that are essentially activities you wouldn't want to necessarily be doing inside your home, but you do need shelter for that.
Oh yeah, the first and biggest thing is we do reloading, and we can cast bullets and do cast a lot of bullets. So we store a lot of things out there, but we also store, like for the grills, the gas grills and backpack stoves and things like that. We store a lot of fuel out there that puts it away from the house. If there was ever an accident, we would lose the shop. It would be a big fire with a lot of fireworks to go with it, but it's far enough away from the house, it wouldn't burn the house down. So, and as I said earlier, we store our tractor there, we store ATVs there, things of that type that there's gasoline there.
And you also mentioned you could use space over there for your, if you were slaughtering wild game that you had procured, and other activities that again, people don't want to be doing in their home, but not necessarily out in full view of their neighbors in their backyard either. Oh
yeah, we can do full processing out there, and no one ever know we are out there processing a deer or whatever. And just to the backside of that, we keep a year's supply of firewood in a huge woodshed that we built as well. I didn't mention that. So, and we have just off from there, we put in a real first-class bean hole where we can do a lot of baking outside. We have a fire ring there, close to there, at our patio, which we can cook on it without any trouble, whether it be with a reflector oven, with Dutch ovens, or any other primitive means of cooking. So, and we do this just for the fun of it, as well as I do research on the books I write. So outdoor cooking is just part of what we do anyway. But if we had no modern conveniences in the home for cooking, we can go outside and we'd be very comfortable cooking year-round.
With all these assets that you've created in your home, You mentioned that a lot of people, this might not meet the image that people have of a survival home. Can you talk a little bit about the consternation or the surprise that some of the people you've introduced to your home have said when you said, "Hey, I've got a survival home," and they're expecting one thing, but they're seeing something quite different. What's so different about yours from what they're expecting?
Well, writing a lot about survival and working with editors and survival consultants and all of that, my office is in my home. So consequently, we have a lot of people fly here and spend 2 and 3 and 4 days here for various conferences or whatever. And I will pick them up at the airport, which is, we have a fairly large airport, but it's about 50 miles from us. And on the way here, all they know about me is what they've read and discussions we've had by phone or at conferences or on wilderness trips or whatever. I think when they're coming to my home for the first time, they're expecting to see some small log cabin way, way, way back in the woods where you have to get in 4-wheel drive to get there, and there'll be gun ports and all this kind of stuff. And when they pull into this, I'll call it a subdivision, it really is a rural subdivision of large acreage. They pull in here, first of all, most of the homes around here are fairly expensive. That shocks them. And then when they pull into our home, yeah, it has a little bit of a log look to the front of it, but it's basically a modern brick home with all the conveniences, and they're shocked. They really are. They are shocked. They think I live like a mountain man somewhere. And I always enjoy watching their reaction, and I like to try to emphasize to them, I want to be comfortable as long as I can, and extend that as far as I can. And then once that breaks down, then when they really see the home and see what we've done, they see that we can go back to the 1700s and be very comfortable. But it is a surprise to see the look on their face when they see it for the first time.
And with all these assets, again, that you've created, you need to be able to protect them. You mentioned about eventually, after you've got your stash of survival food, getting firearms and that sort of thing, you mentioned about storing your propane out of sight and in a secure way. And some of the other, you mentioned a safe room. But what are the other features that you specifically designed into your comfortable modern survival home for security in mind?
Well, one thing we did is in every room in the house, in a place where no one would ever expect, there are firearms, and they're ready to go. They're safe. Our grandchildren, when they hear, there's no danger in them ever finding them. We never discuss where they are with anyone. We also, all of the doors, interior doors are solid wood doors with steel inserts into the wall with long throw deadbolt locks. We can compartmentalize this house in about 4 different ways. And there's also a security system here that if glass breaks, if a door or window is forced open in any way, if there's any motion, as long as that system is on, not only does it let our sheriff know that we've got an invasion, but we have a siren up in the attic that alerts every one of our neighbors, and I'm talking about neighbors from 2 or 3, 4 miles away, will know there's something going on here at the Fears household. And fortunately, we've never ever had a problem with where we live, and I hope we never do. But anyway, this house, if anybody breaks the perimeter in any way, it's going to make a lot of racket and notify a lot of people. Then if we retreated, say, into the master bedroom, it's going to take a lot of effort to get that door down, to get in there, and then we can fall back 1 level further where the master bath is and our 2 closets, and in the back of one of those closets, there's a little door that no one would ever know there. There's a pretty good arsenal in there. So without telling too much, these are the layers of protection we wanted in this home.
And again, the whole concept of this is that it doesn't have to be isolated. It doesn't have to be uncomfortable sacrifice just to live there. It really can be both comfortable, functional, pleasant, attractive, and close to some amenities that you enjoy. But you've looked at layers and layers all the way down from this setting and surroundings and the natural resources available there to the character of the people that you're surrounded with, their skills and their mindset, their ability to strengthen you as a close-knit community of mutual support, and then layer by layer within your home, how it's going to support you comfortably in the event of a disaster. Now, you also mentioned that you have a new resource you're coming out with that people can take advantage of if they want to learn more about this. So could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, to go beyond my books and lectures I give and all this stuff, my website has been pretty much antiquated website. So I hear from so many people now with what's going on in this country today. Why don't you take your website and redo it and start putting a lot of this information up there for us on the website? So for the past 3 or 4 weeks, I've been working with a company, and we're totally rebuilding my website. And tons of this information will be going up on that website within a week or 10 days, including we're going to give a lot of information on how we decided to build this home, along with images in there. So anyone that's interested in really digging further into the concept we have of prepping, and we are, again, I'll emphasize, we are reluctant preppers. I prefer to keep going the way the world was going a few years ago instead of the way it's going now. But by going to jwaynefears.com, you will see the new website in its infancy, and in just a matter of few days, you'll start seeing a lot of prepper information up there, in detail information, because we do live the lifestyle. This is my business, and whether it be wilderness survival or surviving civil disorder or whatever, there's going to be a lot of information. And in this website, you will see that we cover outdoor cooking in a separate section. We cover just basic survival in a section, and we cover shooting in a section. These are things that I do professionally to make a living, as well as I believe in them myself. And one other thing I'd like to add is, in this little community we live in, and the farmers that are our neighbors now, we are the men of this area get together one Saturday every month, and we talk about different scenarios and what we would do if certain things happen. And we have a long breakfast, and planning and thinking ahead is extremely important. If you suddenly have a major crisis of some type and you've never discussed it, never thought about it, you don't even know who your neighbors are, I think you're fighting an uphill battle. But we've tried to overcome that by being really good neighbors, try to get along with one another, and we do have these monthly meetings that I'm in it full time, and the rest of these guys do other things, but I probably learn more from them than they do me.
And you mentioned that you, in your previous interview, which we did with you, that you actually have weathered a significant disruption. You mentioned even feeding some of you, today you mentioned feeding some of the people around you who didn't have access to food. So this is a proven concept that you've done. It isn't just from book learning, and you've spent a lifetime on both wilderness search and rescue and outdoor survival, and you've applied those skills and that experience hands-on into building something that's actually proven itself for you and it stood the test of time. So we're just grateful that you're here with us, grateful that people go out and check out jwaynefears.com going forward. It's going to be a lot of information there. My wife's been after me since our last interview with you. She said, you got to write down all that stuff he said so we make sure we get it right next time we're looking for a house. So just really appreciate you being here with us. And is there any other stone we left unturned here that you'd like to leave with our viewers?
Well, I think that's about it. It's always a pleasure to be on here with you. And as we bring this website up, I hope all of the listeners will take a look at it and enjoy it. And there's a place on there to contact me. And if we're not putting up what you want to see, let us know.
Well, J. Wayne Fears, thank you once again for being here with us and sharing your wisdom to us as reluctant preppers.
It's always a pleasure, and I wish you a good day.